Girls, welcome to this webinar today. I am your host, Nathan Holritz. I'm CEO over at Photographers Edit. By the way, if you're not following us already on Instagram, make sure you do so. Little brain freeze there. I'm actually going to throw up the Photographers Edit Instagram handle there on the top right-hand corner of the screen, Photogs Edit, PHOTOGSEDIT. Make sure that you follow us there. And you can keep up to date with the latest with the brand. And if we have any live streams like this coming up, of course, we'll also keep you posted. My number one goal today really is just to help you have a better experience with Photographers Edit. And when I say better experience, by default, our experience with Photographers Edit is going to be really great. But I know that sometimes, whether you're coming back to Photographers Edit after a little while, maybe you stopped using us because of COVID or some other reason, or maybe you're just getting started with this whole process of outsourcing. And sometimes it's nice just to have a little bit of guidance, a little bit of hand-holding, if you will, in learning how to manage that delegation process, that outsourcing process. And I'm here to do that for you today. So again, welcome to everybody who is listening in. Please don't hesitate to say hello, ask questions, make comments, send me funny emojis, send me dad jokes, whatever you'd like to do. Don't hesitate to engage. These are live for a reason. We want you to be able to actually interact. And as I go through this process today and highlight how you can have the best possible experience with Photographers Edit, if you have questions or you have suggestions even, don't hesitate to put those in the comments. Would love to hear from you as we go along here over the next 50 minutes or so. Once again, for those of you who are joining us, Photogs Edit on Instagram, on Facebook, and actually even on YouTube as well. Some of our content over there on YouTube, Photogs Edit, that is where you're going to find us. Don't forget to follow us there. I'm going to go ahead and take that off the screen. Today, I wanted to kind of walk you through just the basics of the services that we offer at Photographers Edit, and then we're going to jump into how you can have the best possible experience with Photographers Edit. And really, the conversation centers around one word, and that word, very simply, is communication. I'm going to actually drag this over here on the right-hand corner of the screen. Communication, super, super important that you understand the significance of communication really anytime that you delegate or outsource something to somebody else, another company, somebody in-house, an assistant. The process of communication, the significance of communication can't be underestimated because at the end of the day, we want a great working relationship with you. In order for that to happen, just like any relationship, it takes really great communication. So I'm going to show you what that looks like, what that means more specifically in the photographer's workflow here in just a second. Let me go ahead and jump over to, we're going to actually jump to the photographer's website, Photographers Edit website. And if anybody is listening in is brand new to Photographers Edit, our specialty, our position within the industry centers around the concept of customization. We offer custom image editing for professional photographers. I was actually, in fact, this has been our message for years now. I was talking to a photographer friend of mine the other day, and despite how well he knew me and how well he knew or how much he knew about Photographers Edit, somehow the custom portion of it got missed in the conversation. I don't want y'all to miss this because that really is what sets us apart. You may go elsewhere and pay less, have cheaper editing services, but at the end of the day, if you want to have an editing service match your editing style and have an incredible experience all the way through, Photographers Edit is where you should be. And so custom editing is what Photographers Edit is about. Sure, at the end of the day, what we are actually doing is giving you your life back. If you don't have to sit in front of your computer editing for hours and hours on, and I think for the average wedding photographer now, it's somewhere between 12 and 16 hours per wedding. And I know plenty of photographers spend even more time than that. It's super important that you learn how to manage your time effectively as a business owner. And if you can hand over that editing work to a company like Photographers Edit, and not only that, but trust that your images are going to be processed in such a way that they match your editing style, well, it's a win-win. And Photographers Edit is where you need to go just for that. By the way, again, please don't hesitate to comment, to ask questions. And I appreciate this comment actually here on YouTube from Steve. He says, this is very timely as I just signed up and my first order will be going in next week. Steve, I'm really glad that you've kind of joined us to hang out today. And please don't hesitate to ask any questions along the way. I'll try to make this as easy to follow as possible. Thanks for commenting. And again, anybody listening and watching, please don't hesitate to comment, ask questions. let's make this a conversation, a two-way street. All right, so let's jump back to the Photographer's Edit site just very, very quickly, and then we're going to get into the actual workflow. Services. If you're curious, what does Photographer's Edit offer? All you have to do is click on Services. Amazing, right? And when you do that, and I'm going to actually, we've got the Bokeh Podcast logo up here in the left-hand corner. That's kind of funny. We're going to take that off for the time being. Shout out to the Bokeh Podcast. If you don't listen to a podcast right now, Bokeh, B-O-K-E-H podcast is really the photography podcast that you need to go to. We've got close to 500 episodes of content, and we live stream the episodes on video. And, of course, we also push out the audio Bokeh Podcast. But let's get back to the conversation at hand. Services. Culling and custom color correction. So you'll notice custom color correction is still at the root of our services, whether you decide to include culling or not. Most of our clients still do their own culling, but if you want to have us do that work for you, we can do it. We've been processing images now for 13 years, portraits, weddings, commercial work, and pretty much anything you can think of. We've been processing it now. And like I said, for about 13 years, we've got a lot of experience. And the reason I say that is some photographers are a little bit apprehensive handing over the culling process to our team. And the concern lies in the notion that, well, the photographer was there on the wedding day, at the event, or at the portrait session, or whatever it is that they were photographing. They know what was going on. They would do a better job of culling. And the reality is, after a lot of experience, we're able to look at an event or look at a portrait session and pretty easily figure out what's most important to that day. And you can always add a few notes to the order when you place the order in case there's something in particular you want us to look out for. And I'll show you how to do that here in just a little bit. But culling and custom color correction and custom color correction. Now, one of the questions we get very commonly is, why is culling and custom color correction cheaper per image than custom color correction? Theoretically, it's not. You got to do a little math to figure this out. But what's happening, of course, is let's say you send us 2,000 images and we cull out, we'll call it 70% of those images. So 1,400 images we take out, and we're going to give you 600 beautifully finished images. We don't have to process all 2,000. So we're figuring for that. We're figuring the cost of the culling process, but we're also adjusting for the fact that we're not going to be processing all 2,000. We're only going to process 600. And so that's why it looks like it's cheaper, just because the per image cost is less, but that's doing some math for you. In case that gets confusing, all you have to do is click on calculate your cost and enter the number of images that you're going to be submitting. Just like this, 2,000 images. And I'm going to go for, we'll call it 66 to 75% of the images, 70% like we talked about earlier, 600 images or so that we get back, $280. That's with culling. Or if you just want to have us process 600 images for you, you can enter that in the calculator here as well, $144. You do the culling, send us the rest, we process it to match your editing style. We'll talk about that here in a bit. And it's $144. We do offer Lightroom retouching, which is what the basic advanced retouching is. The retouching work that we can do in Lightroom is part of this process. And if you click on more details, you'll see some of those details here. And then we also offer a custom retouching solution. You'll notice on the right-hand side, this is quote-based at $40 an hour rate. And this is work that we would do in Photoshop. Any extensive retouching work, this is going to be a custom retouching order. You submit the images, what you want done to them. We give you a quote. As soon as you approve that, we'll get that retouching done for you. And that is how we handle that. I know that some of you may be familiar with other retouching. I won't name names, but one particular retouching service that offers a flat rate all the way around. To be frank, we've done the math, and we're not quite sure how in the world they're able to offer a flat rate for such a wide range of services when it comes to retouching. We know that retouching, it could take 5 minutes, it could take an hour, depending on what is actually being requested. And so in order to price effectively for that, we do a quote-based service versus just a simple flat rate for the custom work. For that basic and advanced retouching, dodging, burning, skin blemish removal, basic flyaway hair removal, these types of things, we have been able to establish a flat rate, and that's what you'll see for that. That work is done in Lightroom. Okay, so those are our services. I just want to make sure that we don't have any questions regarding services. I'm going to check comments here. If you have any questions about the services before we get to the workflow, and as I mentioned earlier, the significance of communication, pop those questions, comments in the comment box, the chat box there. Please don't hesitate to do so, and I'll give you a couple of seconds to do it. If we don't have any other questions come up, we're going to jump right into the workflow. Any questions whatsoever? Thanks, everybody, for joining in today. And by the way, if you're late to the show, Don't hesitate to comment, ask questions, make suggestions along the way. I've done countless webinars now for the Photographer's Edit brand. And over time, we've actually had a number of suggestions sent our way, which I've then taken to my team. We've actually even implemented some of those suggestions. And so please don't hesitate. If you see something that you feel like could be simplified, made a little bit easier, if you want to make that suggestion to us, you can do that. But if you have questions about the workflow or the things that I'm saying along the way, please don't hesitate to ask those questions. All right, so let's go ahead and jump to the workflow. And I'm going to make sure that we've got, it looks like the audio is going through correctly. The video stream is going. All right, perfect. Let's jump over to our account dashboard. So once you create an account with Photographer's Edit, this is going to be the home page of your account with Photographer's Edit. Now, one thing that I will mention is, and oh, you know what? I realized I was not sharing my screen or my browser screen. There we go. All right, so we hit you'll notice the top right-hand corner, that little account link there, that is where you're going to go. You're going to hit account. It'll take you to the account dashboard. Now, if you've not actually created an account with Photographer's Edit yet, pretty straightforward process where it step-by-step walks you through setting up your editing style. That's the thing we're going to talk about in a second, and the interface is very similar to your actual editing style page. So you'll recognize that once you get to that page if you haven't created an account yet. But what I want to emphasize today is within the relationship that you have with Photographer's Edit. By the way, this is a working relationship. You're the boss. We're the employee. In fact, the analogy that I like to make, I think back to the days when I worked in retail. I worked for, who did I work for? Dillard's and a clothing store brand called J. Riggins. I worked for Baskin Robbins. I had a number of retail, Tommy Hilfiger, number of retail jobs. And when I went to work for that company, and again, keep in mind, in this analogy or the comparison, you're the boss, you're the company, we're the employee. When I went to work for that company, what happened? The first thing, and if you've worked retail, you know this, the first thing that happens is training. Whether you're sitting and watching, back in the day, it was DVDs, or some type of video, or you're reading through an instruction manual, or you're taking that home and doing some homework at home, you're learning the processes, right? That's how it first starts. That's part of that training process. And then you get out on the sales floor and the manager is walking you through the process of how to, whether it was fold clothes, if I was selling clothing, or how to scoop ice cream or make a milkshake, whatever it was that I was doing, I got training for that thing. Not only at the beginning, but then I also got ongoing feedback. And that's how I want you to frame this relationship with Photographer's Edit. You are the boss. You're the company that's hiring Photographer's Edit, your employee. And in order for the relationship to be a really great one, and for us to be able to work together on an ongoing basis, have a successful ongoing working relationship, it requires communication in the form of a sort of training, if you will. You need to train us with your editing style, communicate to us what your editing style is, how you want your images processed. And then if you do that effectively, we can match your editing style. Our editing team is incredible, super, super talented. Not only is the training process extremely thorough, but ultimately, we're just working with a really great team of extremely talented editors who I've been involved personally in training, designing the workflow for. And so if you are effectively communicating your editing style to us, we can match it. The key is that you're communicating it effectively to us up front. I'm going to show you how to do that. I mentioned the significance of communication. This is really where it starts. You'll notice that we have a referral program, rewards program, and a premium membership. And really, if you can just click on those, you can learn more about that. Today, we're going to focus on the significance of communication to Photographer's Edit, communicating your editing style, giving us feedback about orders that you get back, about your editing style. It all centers around communication of your editing style to Photographer's Edit. So I'm going to click on Modify. And you'll notice that it takes us to an editing styles page here, which has a couple of different components. First of all, you'll see that there are two different pre-created styles that we offer at Photographer's Edit as an option, a solution, if you don't currently have your own editing style that you've created, that you've been using in your own workflow, and you just need to get started right away. We have this PE standard option, for example, with a number of before and after, what it looks like straight out of the camera, what that image looks like processed. And you'll see a variety of images there, a description of that style, which is basically a true-to-life editing style. And then we also have something comparable for film, if you like a film look. And you can click and see the details there with similar images as well. And we actually have 3 more styles coming up here, hopefully within the next month or so. We're going to make those live before we really get into busy season. You'll have some additional styles, warm and creamy, dark and moody, and light and airy. We're adding 3 additional styles here, which aren't going to cost you anything to use. All you have to do is choose that option when you go to checkout, and you can use one of our editing styles, and our team will process the images accordingly. So if you need an easier solution, that is there, and you're still going to get some customization because you get to choose the look. But what I think most photographers are really excited about with Photographers Edit, in many cases anyway, is the control that they have with Photographers Edit. They can say to us, I want this thing, I want this look, this feeling, this style on my images, and we've enabled you to communicate that. Again, the significance of communication, to communicate that as easily as possible. We need plenty of information, but we try to make it as simple as possible. So what you're going to do, if you've not already created a style, you're going to see these blanks. You'll just click on that little plus button, and it takes you to this page. I'm going to come back here because I've already begun to fill out my custom style. I just called it my last name, Holritz Portraits. I'm going to click Customize. And what you'll see here are a couple of different things. So first of all, you do get to give it a name. And when you go to place an order, you're going to choose that particular custom editing style from a drop-down on an ordering page. And I'm going to show you that here in just a second. But then the first way that you communicate your editing style to us is to share images straight out of the camera, and then those same images processed the way you would process them. The brightness, the contrast levels, the white balance. If you use a particular preset as kind of a baseline finish for your images, the application of that preset on those images, we want to see how you would process those images. And I'm going to actually jump right back over here because I notice I've got a question from Steve. Steve says, does your team take a look at our website portfolios at all to get a sense of editing style? Would a link to an online gallery of a full wedding be helpful? And it's a good question, Steve. So really the easiest way, or I think the most effective way, based on our experience, because we did actually enable photographers to share links to their website or even encourage it in the past. The problem is that having a selection of images from a portfolio which could be dated might cause a little bit of confusion in the process of editing the images. What we want to make sure we have from you is an updated editing style in your profile. And then, as I'm going to share in just a little bit, also potentially some images, some example images in your Lightroom catalog. That way we've got the most current and updated editing style. That's number one. Two, as I'm again going to explain here in just a second, what you're going to notice is that not only do we ask for a visual representation of your editing style, but we do want an explanation of that editing style as well via text. And we give you the option to be able to, or the opportunity, the tools to be able to share that information with us. If we just go to your website and we look at the images, and in many cases, our experience is that styles can kind of shift from one image to the next. Maybe it's a portrait session or a wedding, or you shot the wedding 2 years ago, but then this wedding was shot 6 months ago, and you're processing things just a little bit different. We're looking for consistency in the information that we're trying to put together for the sake of understanding the editing style. So best place to communicate that style is through this editing styles page versus sharing a link to a website. I hope that makes sense. Really, I guess to put it very simply, because I tend to like to simplify things as much as possible, we're going to have a much more detailed picture of your editing style if you communicate that using this editing style page that I'm sharing with you, than for us just to go to the site and kind of guess and take some notes and put together an idea. We actually give you the opportunity to communicate it very specifically to us. So I hope that makes sense. Again, don't hesitate to continue to ask questions. Love the interaction. Let me jump back to our website. And really to that end, what you're going to start with, as we mentioned, is the visual representation. So you'll notice the image straight out of the camera, and then that same image processed the way that you want it to. By the way, keep in mind, for anybody looking at this on their monitor that may not be color corrected, through, we're not using Zoom, through Ecamm, through the software, you are maybe seeing a slightly distorted image when it comes to color. So please don't pay too close attention to color. What you're seeing is not a representation of how we're going to process your images. And of course, styles differ from person to person. But that being said, this is an image straight out of the camera. So our team has a visual. Oh, this is what they started with. Oops, excuse me. Right here, this is what they started with straight out of the camera. And then that same image processed the way that I want it. Same kind of idea here. This is from a wedding that I shot a couple of years ago. That same image processed the way that I want it to. So the team has a visual representation. Now we give you actually up to 16 spaces. Right here, of course, you just see 8. Once you fill those up, if you want to add an additional 8, that's awesome. What I suggest is images from a wide variety of lighting scenarios. Super important to do that because if we just have all outdoor images, for example, and then you're also going to send us reception images as your wedding photographer, or if you're a portrait photographer and you're shooting, you send us all studio images, but then you go do a lifestyle session, it's hard for us to match those things because they're not the same. So what I would ask for is images from a wide variety of scenarios. And if you're a wedding photographer, but you also shoot portraits, we do give you the option to be able to create multiple editing styles. So you'll notice on this page here, we've got up to 3 spaces. You can create up to 3 different editing styles. Maybe you have one for wedding, you have another one for portrait, then you have another one for commercial work. And then once you fill those out, you can choose one of those styles when you place an order based on the type of images you're submitting to us. So that's really important to note. Okay, so let's jump back into the customization process. So you've taken the time to share at least 8, ideally even as many as 16 before and after images straight out of the camera, processed the way that you want them to. Gives us a great visual representation. And by the way, it's important for us to be able to have the visual, because one of the things we've experienced in the past is in fact, it still happens. Photographers will say, I like a bright image, or I like a high contrast image, or I like a warm white balance. And as you all probably know at this point, those words can mean a million different things to a million different photographers. It's a very subjective process. We see things differently. And so we need that visual representation so that we can pair that then with the instructions that you're going to share down here, and I'll explain that in just a second. You can share a Lightroom preset, a color preset, or a black and white preset, or both, one of each, with our team if you are using a particular preset to create your editing style. Now, one of the common questions that we get is, can you upload multiple presets? And the answer relatively simply is no. If we had to juggle 2 or 3 or 4 different Lightroom presets in order to make an order happen, to match your editing style, things would get super convoluted, super confusing, and ultimately take much, much longer. Not only would that affect the turnaround time for you, but it would also potentially confuse things in the process of communicating your editing style to us. So what I recommend is that if you have one baseline preset, and by the way, treat the preset as a baseline finish to your image. That's the goal. When I create a preset, that's how I create a preset. When we created these custom presets that you can choose from when you use Photographer's Edit, we create what is supposed to be a baseline finish for your images. It gives them a certain look as a baseline. Brightness, contrast still has to be adjusted. Of course, we're going to crop, maybe adjust white balance a little bit, but the presets are meant to give the image a baseline finish. So treat them that way in your workflow. It'll be much easier to then share that work with us. So you're going to create, if you haven't already, you're going to either get a Lightroom preset if you want to use one in the workflow, or create one for yourself that works really well on your images across a wide variety of scenarios. That's going to be your baseline preset, and that's what you're going to upload right here. Again, keep in mind, if you're uploading a preset here, you should have used it in the after images that you uploaded so it matches that look. Super important to be consistent all the way through in this communication process. Of course, a lot of presets now have profiles, so you can upload your color profiles as well. And then basics, white balance, exposure, contrast, grain. These are the basics, right? We want to know your preferences when it comes to these elements of the post-production process. But again, instead of just giving you a few spaces to communicate what your preferences are, we're able to pair these, and these are just simple drop-downs. We're able to pair this information with the before-afters, and that gives us a better picture of what's going on. Excuse me. And then additional comments. So we know your editing style may have some nuance to it, and you want to give us that additional information that maybe wasn't communicated through the visual via the basics drop-downs. You want to give us a little bit more information to go along with it. That's fine. What I would encourage you to do is to be very, very clear about what it is that you're looking for in your style. If you've got a well-established style that you've been using for a long time, hopefully at this point you can communicate what that is effectively. Just be clear about what it is that you're looking for in your images. And I'm going to, again, bring this back to the point, the significance of communication. By the way, I'm still learning this, and I work with a relatively large team of people that help not only make the Photographer's Edit happen, but Bokeh Podcast and some other companies that we're launching. It's super important to be clear, number one, what it is that you're wanting up front in order to delegate. And then when you delegate that thing, to communicate in a way that resonates. It's simple and easy to understand and resonates with most people. And that can be a little bit of a challenge. It's a little bit of a learning process. We're trying to make that as easy as possible through this interface here. Just make sure that if you are going to leave additional comments that you're super concise. And you'll notice actually when you go to enter that information in, I think we actually have, it's a 100 character limit You can see that here. But if you can't fit everything you need to into 100 characters, need to make an additional point or 2 or 3 points, then all you have to do is click on that little plus icon. It drops it down. You can add some more information there, whether it's related to culling, if you're going to have us cull, color correction, cropping, straightening, or black and white. Now, we do give you some opportunity to have a little bit more customization in the ordering process, but what we always want is a baseline set of information, an editing style profile from you so that our team knows what it is that we're trying to achieve in the editing style. So make sure that, as I mentioned, you communicate. First of all, you're very clear about what it is that your editing style represents, what it is that you're looking for when you hand that over to us. Be very, very clear about that. And then number 2, communicate that editing style to us very thoroughly. It's super important that we get as much information as possible as you share this editing style with us. The before after images straight out of the camera, those same images processed the way that you would, including a preset if you use a preset, communicating what the basic, the white balance, the contrast, the brightness preferences are, communicating that to us. And if you have additional notes that are global preferences that aren't specific to an individual job but are global preferences, make sure you include it there in the editing style page, and make sure then that this page is just thoroughly filled out. Now, once you've completely filled that out, you can go back to the editing styles and you'll notice an image there. It'll pull a thumbnail from one of the images that you shared. And at that point, you'll be able to use that particular editing style when you go to place an order, which I'm going to show you here in just a little bit. But I want to open the floor one more time for questions. The proverbial floor here on this Facebook live stream. We're actually on YouTube as well. In fact, Steve, thanks for chiming in from YouTube. But we've got the streaming to Facebook, facebook.com/photogsedit, and then youtube.com/photogsedit as well is where we're streaming. Any questions about sharing your editing style? I know the last thing that probably a lot of photographers are thinking about when they're like, you know what, okay, I'm going to take this leap and outsource my editing to Photographer's Edit. The last thing they're thinking about is how important communication is in that process. They're just like, this is the way that I edit my images, and I just need somebody that can match that and do it and get it done right and do it the first time. Totally understand the sentiment, but just understand the importance. I cannot stress this enough. For the best possible experience with Photographer's Edit, if I literally had 30 seconds to tell you how to have the best possible experience with Photographer's Edit, I would just say, you know what? Communicate. Communicate thoroughly and yet concisely. That's all. And it'll be a win-win situation. You communicate your editing style really well to us. You communicate in detail when you place that order. And as I'm going to show you here in just a second as well, you communicate in great detail through the feedback process, whether positive or negative. And I'll explain how that works here in just a second. Any questions about editing style before we keep going to the order process? Okay. Thank you again to everybody who has chimed in, who's listening in, watching live. Again, don't hesitate to ask questions, make comments, send me funny emojis. I mean, seriously, anything you'd like. Let's just make this a two-way street. All right, let's jump back to the website. And again, I'll keep an eye on the comments as they come in. I'll make sure to respond. But let's jump back to the website. I'm going to switch back to my browser here. So you're ready to delegate your editing or outsource your editing to Photographer's Edit. The first and most important step is to communicate your editing style thoroughly and concisely to Photographer's Edit. You've done that. Awesome. Now it's time to place that first order. So let's go to the ordering process. I'm just clicking on order. Now you'll notice right here this option, submit your scheduled order. I will just very quickly take this opportunity to share with you. We do offer something called a premium membership. It is not required to use Photographer's Edit. You do not have to have a premium membership to use Photographer's Edit. But if you are interested, the premium membership, it's $99 for a year. So if you purchase it today, May 12th, you can use it through May 11th of next year. $99 for a year. And what that gets you is a little bit faster turnaround time, 3 business days average, even during busy season, for orders up to 800 images. And a dedicated editing team. So the same eyes looking at your images for the sake of consistency. And this can really help in the process. If you're going to be a power user with Photographer's Edit, going ahead and committing to that premium membership is going to give you that much better an experience. Now, the only reason I bring that up at this point, outside of just, of course, I have to at least be a little bit of a salesperson, right? What I want to highlight is when I go to the ordering process, right now I have the premium membership turned on in my account. And so that's why you're seeing right here, submit your scheduled order. That faster turnaround time comes as a result of scheduling my orders in advance. So if I know that next week I'm shooting a wedding in, wherever, Atlanta, I want to go ahead and schedule ahead of time the order that I'm going to submit a day or two after that wedding. And as long as I do that, then I can get that fast turnaround time. So that's why you're seeing a submit your scheduled order. If I didn't have a premium membership, it would be very, very simple. You just go straight to the interface that you're about to see here. Simple, easy drop down. So you're ready to place an order. And in this case, we're just going to keep it simple. We're going to say custom color correction. This is the majority of the orders that we get anyway, is that custom color correction. As I mentioned earlier, of course, we also have culling, and then the basic, advanced retouching, and custom retouching. Those options are there. And for anybody, I know that we've got some quick eyes sometimes that are watching these webinars. You did notice we have this option at the bottom. For those, again, who are going to be power users with Photographer's Edit, they want that 10% discount. If you want to purchase credit in bulk from PE, we will give you 10% off of orders of $1,000 or more. If you know you're going to be spending at least that much this year, might as well go ahead and do it. So that option exists as well, and you can do that through the shopping cart. But let's go to a custom color correction order. I'm going to hit continue. And this is going to take me to the ordering page. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice is that we have this little timeline right here. And you'll notice in bold, estimated turnaround time. So if you're not a premium member and you're not expecting that 3 business day turnaround, you're going to at least be able to get an idea of what the turnaround time is going to be based on the number of images you are submitting to us. And of course, our capacity at the moment. Right now, 10 images, you're going to get back pretty quickly. But this gives you an idea of how long that order may take. And of course, we'll keep you up to date via email, and your account will keep you up to date as to the status of your order once you place that order. But you'll get an estimated turnaround time here at the very top. Now, the next thing you're going to notice, if you just scroll down, there's lots of options here, a lot of drop downs to choose from. We are a custom editing service. And why is that important? Well, what we realized over time is that even when we tried to simplify our service even more, we knew that photographers kept giving us this feedback. We're like, hey, can we have this thing? Can we do this? And can we add this feature? And can you do this for me? We were like, you know what? It probably doesn't make sense to continue to try to minimize the number of options when photographers by default just want a lot of control. They want a lot of options, right? So what we've tried to do is give you as many options as possible without overcomplicating the process. So to that end, you're going to notice a lot of different drop downs here on this page. The cool thing is, again, to the end, or to making it easier for you, this first drop down right here is called an order profile. I'd rather call it an order preset, but I didn't want to confuse it with Lightroom presets, so we call it an order profile. What this enables you to do is to create a preset for your orders. So for example, I'm about to choose, I'm going to actually name a new profile here. So I'm just going to call it portraits, for example. And if I know I'm about to place an order that is going to have settings that are pretty consistent with future portrait orders, I can go ahead and save this as a profile. And what happens is the next time I come back to place a portrait order, I can choose from that drop-down portrait. And it will automatically fill in all the settings that wouldn't be specific to an individual, or excuse me, it would fill in all the settings relevant to that style of order, with the exception, of course, of the order name or the specific number of images to that order, the things that would be specific to an individual order. But it's going to automatically fill in everything else for you. That will just help save you time in the process of ordering in the future. So I just wanted to point that out. And of course, that profile will get saved when you add the order to the cart. Okay, so then we're going to give it a name. We'll call this, Smith Portraits, or Portrait Session, for example. I already chose the service, custom color correction, number of images, 10, type of shoot. In this case, it is a portrait session. What type of images are you sending? And by default, I hope that you're using Lightroom. Lightroom 10 is the most recent version. Classic 10, by the way, not the mobile version, not the cloud version. Lightroom Classic 10 gives us the most functionality when it comes to the process of Lightroom catalog management and functionality within Lightroom. And so that's what we're sticking with. I'm a little bummed that they call it Lightroom Classic because it makes it sound like it's old school. It is the most updated version of the software and certainly the most powerful. So that's what we're using. And as long as you're using Adobe Creative Cloud and you're keeping your software up to date, you should have Lightroom Classic 10. We do pop up a little reminder right here just to submit that Lightroom catalog with Smart Previews and that it is Lightroom 9 or 10, not one of the older versions, but 9 or 10. And that's important because we don't want to create any confusion in the catalogs as we're sharing catalogs back and forth. What type of files do you want in return? By default, you're going to get a Lightroom catalog back. And just to add a little bit of clarification here, the majority of the orders that our clients submit to us are via Lightroom Catalog and Smart Previews. If you're not familiar with Smart Previews are like mini RAW files. And yet, they're about 10% the size of actual RAW files, which is really cool because ultimately it's going to save you a ton of time when it comes to sharing images with us. So Smart Previews are the way to go. If you're not familiar with that, what you can do is jump over here to our support site. I'm going to open this up here really quickly and show you. You'll notice the support link there in the top right-hand corner of the site. And if you click on that, it'll take you to our support site where you can search for pretty much anything you can think of related to our service. Just put the words in there and we'll share an article with you. But if you go specifically to the Photographer's Edit workflow section, setting up your editing style, we talked about that, but prepping files to send, you're going to click on that, and we've got a video in here that you can watch. It's only 3 minutes long, along with some text instructions that explain how to export the Smart Previews and share that with your Lightroom catalog. So if you've got any questions about that process, make sure you take advantage of the support site. Okay, what we're then going to send you in return is a Lightroom catalog file. Super easy to download. You just connect that to your original RAW files when you get back from us, and you'll be able to see all the work that our team has applied to your images. And Steve, I see your question. Give me just 2 seconds. I'm going to finish going through this, and then I'll come back to your question. Actually, you know what? It's relevant to the conversation at the moment. So let me just go ahead and pop this up on the screen. And let's see here. There we go. So Steve says, if my second photographer has a Fuji or Panasonic or Olympus camera, etc., should I convert those to DNG before sending? I noticed your RAW files were only Canon and Nikon. I'm not sure. Steve, remind me where you were seeing that they were just Canon or Nikon. We definitely accept any type of RAW file that is current and active that Lightroom supports. We support that, and we will process them. The important thing to remember is just to make sure that if you regularly work with a particular photographer who has who's using a different camera than you are, that you include maybe a couple of their images in your editing style and demonstrate how to convert those images. Again, we want to make sure that we've got a complete picture of your editing style. And important, if you're working regularly with a particular photographer, to go ahead and share their files so that we've got that in your editing style. But as long as your style has been communicated clearly and concisely, we can match that regardless of the file type as best as possible. So don't hesitate to include that. And again, it doesn't just have to be Canon or Nikon. It could literally be any RAW file. And if I miss something, if we have somewhere on our site that we only accept Nikon or Canon files, let me know where that is, because I need to go correct that or fix that. It's certainly not the case. We are not limited to just Nikon or Canon. The drop down only listed NEF and Sierra Canon RAW file. Okay, you know what, Steve, you may have caught us here. Let's go back and make sure, and this will be important. So I appreciate you bringing this up. Let's see here. Aha, I see what you're saying. RAW files there. Yeah, you know what? That's a great point. Good catch. And I'm going to grab a screenshot of that because, yeah, it certainly is a little bit misleading. Certainly the most common, but it does not represent accurately what it is that we're processing. That's a great catch. It's really funny how we've been in business now for 13 years, and sometimes we realize we've got kind of our blinders on because we got our heads down and we're so used to the service. It's nice to have that little bit of objective feedback every once in a while. That's a good catch. Should have been an easy one that I should have caught a long time ago. So I appreciate that, Steve. And we'll certainly, I've grabbed a screenshot of that. I'm going to share that with our team and we'll get that fixed right away. I'm glad that you actually highlighted that though, because if you'll notice, and I'll just highlight this and we'll keep going with the RAW files. And let me actually, we'll pop this comment off the screen so everybody can see clearly. But with these RAW files, it does cost a little bit more. If you're going to submit RAW files, well, I would just encourage you not to do it. Anybody listening and watching, if you're trying to figure out this workflow, things are going to be so much easier for you if you just use Lightroom, share the Lightroom catalog and Smart Previews. The upload process, the reception back of just a simple Lightroom catalog, so much easier, much more streamlined a workflow. And by the way, that's it doesn't cost you any extra to do that. It does cost extra to not only submit raw files, but if you want finished JPEGs back from us, we charge an extra fee for that too, because of course we have to export it. It takes a lot longer with our workflow. So there is an additional fee there. But yeah, again, good catch, Steve. I appreciate that. That's good. All right. Let's keep going. And then, because I want to get to the feedback section here as soon as we finish the ordering process. So we do have an option here at the bottom. Do you want to review sample edits? And some photographers like to see a few sample images before the whole order is processed. That's fine. And what you're going to want to keep in mind is we put here in the parentheses, because it's so important for photographers to know. If a photographer submits an order to us and they're like, man, I really want to see samples. It's important to me to be able to see samples before I get the whole job back. We've had some photographers get a little frustrated because it adds to the turnaround time. Probably an average of about a business day, an additional business day to the process if you want those sample images. And so to that end, my suggestion would be for anybody who's using us, rather than asking for samples, just make sure that you've clearly and concisely communicated your editing style to our team through your editing styles page. If you've done that and it's consistent, the information's accurate, it's up to date, our team is going to match your editing style really well. And the need for sample edits goes out the door. I'll explain the process of feedback here in just a second if you do ever get an order back that needs to be tweaked or adjusted a little bit. But my suggestion would be don't add to the turnaround time with a set of sample images. Go ahead and get that whole order back. As long as you've communicated your editing style to us clearly and concisely, we're going to deliver a really great finished product for you. And if you ever need to give us feedback on a completely finished order and ask for something to be tweaked, we've made that process easy as well, and I'm going to share that in just a second. You'll notice here, choose an editing style. What editing style would you like applied to this order? You're going to here choose either one of the styles we've created or one of your custom styles. And in this case, we're going to choose that Holritz Portraits custom editing style that I showed you earlier. Black and white in this case, yeah, you know what? I actually want 10% of my images in black and white, and so I'm going to leave that there. We give you the option to be able to convert as many as 100% if you want. Or, of course, you don't have to choose black and white. When I was shooting engagement sessions, or weddings for that matter, engagement sessions in particular, I think I delivered about 30% of my images in black and white for the sake of variety, something interesting, right? And we don't charge any extra for conversion to black and white. Where we do charge extra is if you want both a color and black and white version. And you can choose that option here. It's just 5 cents an image extra to do that. Because again, there's a conversion process involved, and sometimes black and white, conversion to black and white can, a particular black and white preset may affect an image a little bit differently than the color, may have to tweak it a little bit. So it does cost a little bit extra if you want both. If you just simply want a black and white or color version, we're not charging any extra for that. We include that in the 24 cents an image fee. All right, and then cropping and straightening. I mentioned earlier that we do give you the ability to further customize an order on the ordering page, and this is one of the ways that you can do that. You can designate how you want the images cropped. Straighten horizon. So obviously there's a natural crop that happens when you straighten an image a little bit. Regular crop, bring it in just a little bit more, get rid of some of that extra negative space, if you will. A tight crop, and then no crop. And by the way, if you want a little bit more detail about what we mean by those terms, you can click on the little question mark there and see that information. So I'm going to, in this case, just say straighten the horizon. Noise reduction, I would say, for me, the cameras that I'm using, maybe 1600 ISO and up, I do want some noise reduction. Again, we don't charge any extra for that. Chromatic aberration, I'm not worried about. Lens correction, I don't care about. In my particular case, image categorization, I don't need categorization because this is not a wedding, this is a portrait session, but we do basic categorization for you, prep, ceremony, portraits, reception at no additional cost. If you want to have us use additional categories or create additional categories in the Lightroom catalog for you, we can do that, and it's 3 cents an image to do that categorization, that organization for you. Sequencing images, we do that for you. By the way, Steve, you mentioned earlier you've got a second photographer. If you have that second photographer and the images need to be sequenced, make sure that you have your images time synced or your cameras time synced. But if we need to manually make adjustments to the sequencing, we can certainly do that, and the option exists there. Again, we're not charging you extra for that. And then you do have the option, if you want, to add basic or advanced Lightroom retouching as an option here. You're submitting a Lightroom catalog to us, and you want us to go in and tweak some of those images, add that retouching service to the images, you can choose that option here as well and then give us the specifics. And then what we encourage our clients to do is to put the Lightroom catalog in Smart Preview, zip it up in a folder. And again, you can see this on the support site and how to prep your images or prep your files to send on the support site. We talk about this in more detail. But you're going to zip that Lightroom catalog in the Smart Previews in a folder, compress it in a folder, put it in a Dropbox or Google Drive, a file sharing service. You're going to put that in there, and then you're going to share that link with us, and you can do that here if it's already ready to go. If you do have any specific nuanced instructions for this particular order that are truly unique to this order. Again, we're not talking about global preferences. Global editing style preferences need to go on your editing styles page. Please make sure that that's done. If, for example, you're submitting a portrait session and you know that there are two images, if it was a wedding, for example, maybe there were two images of the kiss, they're both blurry, but you need to keep them, you're going to specify that here. Or you know that you left a lot of extra space around the family portraits for a particular reason, and you don't want us to crop that tight, but everything else you want us to crop. These types of kind of nuanced instructions specific to this particular order, you're going to put those notes here. And again, 100 character limit. So be short, be concise, be clear about what it is you're wanting, and you can communicate that concisely. And if you do need some additional lines, you can click on that little plus button, add additional lines. Confirmation of the information for the order, and you'll add that to the cart and then check out. Pretty straightforward. All right. Any questions about the ordering process? I know there's a lot there, but again, because we are a custom editing service, we've tried to give you the options. We've tried to give you the options while also hopefully not overwhelming you too much. We want to give you as much control as possible, but make it as easy as possible, despite all those options, to submit an order. And I hope that we've done a good job of that. Any questions about the ordering process before we get to the last segment, how to give us feedback? Any questions whatsoever? By the way, everybody that's streaming, don't hesitate to jump over. In fact, I'm not going to even say don't hesitate. Go to Photogs Edit on Instagram, PHOTOGSEDIT, and follow us there. Make sure that you follow us, and not only will you be able to keep up with examples, be able to see examples of the work that we're processing for our clients, you can also keep up to date with our podcast content as well. We share some of that as well, the Bokeh Podcast, BOKEH podcast on Instagram. Okay. No questions about the ordering process. Let's jump to the last section here. As we said earlier, the significance of communication, this whole process of delegation, of outsourcing your editing, communication is at the center of a great experience. So it starts by communicating your editing style in detail, before after examples, the visual representation of your editing style, and then communicating, of course, the text and instructions, choosing the basic preferences when it comes to white balance, contrast, brightness, cropping, straightening, even grain, if you have preferences in that regard. You can communicate all that information through your editing style page. Make sure to do so thoroughly and concisely. That's the first step in the communication process. Secondly, you're going to communicate, of course, what you actually want done, what orders you want. And we've just gone through that ordering process. The third step in the communication process is the feedback process. Now, I want to take us back to the analogy again, because this is super important to note. The countless conversations I've had with photographers over the years when it comes to apprehension about giving us feedback if there is something about the order that needs to be tweaked or adjusted. The number of conversations I've had with photographers who are afraid to do so because they don't want to come off mean, I guess, or too critical, or they feel like, you know what, if I just go in and fix this myself, it'll just be faster that way. And then I hear that they spent 2, 3, 4 hours or whatever it is going in and fixing something. I want you to avoid all of this for multiple reasons. Number one, if we're going to establish a long-term working relationship, it's important that we get feedback from you. And what I was beginning to say earlier is I want to take us back to the analogy of working for another company, for a retail company, for example. It's not just that you get training up front about how to work for that company, but you get ongoing feedback from the management. You are the management. You are our boss. And we want ongoing feedback from you. We want positive feedback, and we want constructive criticism as well, if need be. And it's really important to do that if you want a successful relationship with Photographers Edit. There are some photographers who have used our service. And we've had the opportunity to work with thousands of photographers over the years. But there's some photographers who have used our service who tried it maybe once, maybe even twice. And it wasn't exactly 100% exactly what they had in mind to begin with. And they left. Not only did they leave, but they left without communicating. And that's the last thing that we want. We want you to understand that this is a long-term relationship. If you want a successful working relationship with Photographer's Edit, we would ask that you commit to that process. And probably, again, the most important component of that process is the communication process. So it's super important that you communicate your preferences in detail, number one. You communicate the order accurately, number two. And then number three, you give us feedback. And we're not gonna hate you for giving us feedback. We want feedback, especially if it's constructive and specific and detailed. And let me show you how to do that here really quick. Clark, thanks for chiming in, by the way. Clark says, looking forward to working with you all. I really appreciate you chiming in, Clark, and looking forward to the opportunity to work with you as well. So let's actually jump right over to, I'm going to pop my browser window back up here, and I'm going to jump to my account page. So you submitted an order to Photographer's Edit. You get that order back. And then the cool thing is, of course, you'll see here under the order history, there's a status column and it says order completed. What you could do here then is to go ahead and give us feedback about that particular order. And you'll notice we made it interesting, made it fun. There are emojis. Now, I told you earlier that photographers are apprehensive giving us feedback. Seriously, I cannot tell you how many conversations I've had with photographers over the years. We're like, oh man, I feel so bad giving you feedback. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be mean. And of course, we want the feedback. It makes us better and we can ultimately better serve you. But one of the things that happened is we started putting this emoji option in the feedback, and we only had 3 emojis. And photographers, I think at this, probably multiple photographers say to us, that the smiley face was, or the super frowny face was too much. I felt bad clicking on that emoji. Can you maybe add some more emojis? So we've added more emojis. Even though your emojis have nuance. Now we have 5 different emojis that you can choose from. Maybe you get that order back and you're not pissed off or upset at us by any means, but there are a few things that need to be tweaked about that order. You can give us that kind of feedback. So you just click on that. We've got a meh emoji, this little meh emoji here with the straight line mouth. That's the meh emoji. If you're kind of like, not pissed off, not super happy, just need to give a little bit of feedback and hopefully get something tweaked. You could do that. And that's just part of the relationship with us. You click on that. And then maybe, let's say the white balance was a little bit too warm. So you say, my editing style wasn't followed. And you'll see an additional set of options here. What editing style wasn't followed? Oh, the Holritz portraits. And I click on that. And what's the issue? The white balance, it's supposed to be neutral, right? That's you have a neutral white balance as part of your editing style, but there were 5 images in the portrait section that were just too warm. You need those adjusted, and you don't want to do the work yourself, and you want Photographer's Edit to get better at processing your images, so you're going to give us feedback about that. So you choose that from the drop-down, and then you can say, we'll call it 10 images in the outdoor portraits were too warm. You can even put the image numbers, the file names there. And then, just like when you communicate your editing style, we do ask for a visual example. And we've run into this countless times where a photographer, again, it's similar to sharing an editing style. A photographer says, hey, the images are too warm, for example. And by the way, I say countless times. I want to put this in perspective. We processed millions and millions and millions of images over the years. And I think our average our redo rate is something like 2 to maybe 3% at the most. So our team is very, very good at what they do. But naturally, over 13 years, we've had a variety of feedback. And one of the things that happens is a photographer will say, hey, I need you to fix these images or adjust these images. And when they do that, they say, the images are too warm. And that's it. We don't hear anything more. There's no, hey, it needs to be adjusted by 500 degrees Kelvin, or here are a couple of examples. It's just, they're too warm. Fix it. And unfortunately, that leaves us guessing. We really don't want to guess, because then there's back and forth, potentially more frustration. That puts everybody in a bad spot, really. So in this case, if the images were a little bit too warm, what does that look like? You can be specific in the text, but then also share just a couple of examples. And it's super easy to do this, by the way. On a Mac, for example, Command-Shift-4, and I could do this. I did it earlier with Command-Shift-3 is the full screen screenshot. Command-Shift-4 gives me this little target icon, if you will, and I can literally just drag like that and drop and let go. And you can see it pops that little, you don't get to see that because I'm only sharing my browser, but it pops a little thumbnail down there, saves it, and I can just upload that directly to Photographer's Edit. You can do the same thing from Lightroom. So you're going to open up Lightroom. You're looking at that catalog. The image is a little bit too warm. You'll see it says problem image. You're going to take a screenshot of the image that's too warm. You're going to make the adjustment to the white balance, upload that second screenshot showing how you would have processed it. Do that twice. All we're asking for is 2 images. This literally would take maybe 90 seconds to do. Share those images and then say, I need this redone by PE. And if you would like us to, in addition to redoing the order for you, have a support rep reach out to you and maybe help you walk through this process to better communicate your editing style in the future, for example, we can do that as well. And you've got that option. And then you just submit feedback. Now, number one, we get better because you've given us feedback, whether it's positive or negative. We certainly like encouragement when you get an order back and you're really excited about it. But we also get better in processing your images for you if you are specific with us about tweaks, adjustments that need to be made. And we can keep that information on file as well, which is great. But number two, you don't have to go back and make those adjustments. We don't want you spending any unnecessary time editing your orders. Certainly up front, but if things never need or ever need to be tweaked, we don't want you to have to spend time doing that either. We get better from it, and it may take you 3 minutes or 5 minutes at most to be able to communicate this feedback to us. But instead of spending an additional hour or two or however long going back and fixing things yourself, we get better. We do the work for you. We're not charging you anything extra for the redo. And so it ends up being a win-win for everybody. If you're committed to the long-term relationship with Photographers Edit, I cannot stress enough, you do have to communicate your editing style well. You do have to place that order accurately. And at the end of the day, you need to communicate, give us feedback. Communicate that feedback to us, positive and negative. Again, everybody wins as a result, and we'll do an incredible job processing your images for you moving forward, matching your editing style. We custom edit the images to match your editing style, and we can do that if you communicate thoroughly and effectively with us. All right, so that's the feedback process. I'm going to say this one more time. Best possible experience with Photographers Edit. Our team is super, super talented. We're going to process your images really, really well for you. The best possible experience with Photographers Edit all centers around one word. That's communication. Communication, communication. Super, super important that you communicate your editing style thoroughly to us. That, of course, you place the order accurately, but then ultimately at the end of the day, you also communicate feedback to us, positive and negative. We're all going to get better for it. And ultimately, we'll be able to free up your time so you can focus on doing things that will help build your business more effectively. All right. Any questions, comments, suggestions as it relates to the feedback process or anything else that we've talked about today before we finish up here? And again, thank you everybody for listening in, for streaming today, for commenting, for asking questions. I really love the engagement. And of course, if you ever have any questions about the Photographers Edit service, as I mentioned earlier, you can go to the support site. Just click on support, the support link here. It takes you to our support site. It is a wealth of information, an incredible amount of information. I mean, we've literally spent years building this thing up and refining and tweaking it, adjusting it. So start by searching, just right here. Just search in a word or a couple of words or a phrase or a sentence. Search that first. See what pops up. You know, for example, if I just type in Lightroom, you can see it's automatically starting to suggest things. But if I hit enter, there are going to be a lot of articles naturally that have or that are related to Lightroom. Do I need Lightroom in order to work with PE? Obviously, that's the case. But if you search a specific term, you'll be able to pull up articles related to that particular, at least those that are titled with that particular term. You'll be able to pull those articles up and then go to that information. There are a number of video tutorials that help walk you through the process and make it as easy as possible for you. Take advantage of the support site. And if you don't see what you need there, make sure to look thoroughly, do a search. If you don't see what you need there, you can click on this little contact us button, fill out that form, submit a request. Our customer service team is amazing. They'll get back with you very quickly and answer those questions that you might have. You can also email directly support@photographersedit.com, and we'll take great care of you and you and you and you and you and you and all of those out there. So thank you all very much for listening in, for chiming in, for commenting, for engaging today. Again, if you think of any other questions, jump over to the support site. If you don't see the answers there, email us support@photographersedit.com or just submit a form there through the site. We'll be glad to help you out, to take care of you. I really look forward to the opportunity to be able to work with you as the season picks up. I'm excited. I'm cautiously excited. I've got my fingers crossed a little bit, but as things begin to open up and where photographers are shooting more and more, I want to provide a service that ultimately enables you to focus on actually building your business, not being stuck behind the computer. We want to help you do that. If you give us the opportunity, we'll take great care of you, I promise. Thank you all very much for chiming in. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and look forward to working with you this season.